Yeah.
So I wanted to cover before we close the nexus that's emerging between the Trump administration and certain comprador governments in Latin America, specifically El Salvador, but there's also Ecuador, where Daniel Noboa of the zillionaire elite Noboa clan has just apparently stolen an election in which Luisa Gonzalez, the social democratic candidate from Rafael Correa's party, appeared to have won, but it was surging in all polls just hours before the election. It's statistically impossible, according to Francisco Rodriguez, Latin American political scientist from the University of Denver, who's done an analysis, and maybe we'll interview him about that, or at the very least, I'll tweet about it after the show. But Daniel Noboa's family, they have Bonita bananas. Bonita banana shipments have been stuffed with cocaine and caught transferring into the U.S. Ecuador has become a major transit point for cocaine to the U.S., and it's been overrun with violence since Noboa took power. And Eric Prince and the Trump world security goons are painting Noboa as a kind of model, an economic model for Latin America. And at the same time, Prince and others, Trump himself, are painting Nayib Bukele, the Salvadoran president, who's very popular in El Salvador, we cannot deny that, far more popular than Noboa, as their security model, how they want to order society. Well, what is Noboa going to do? He's hollowing out all social services, which is actually driving more young men into gangs, where the only source of cash is, and then to put them all in mass trials and lock them up in a giant prison and cash in on them. Cash in as Nayib Bukele is now doing in El Salvador, where he has pledged to expand their CCOT prison, which has housed tens of thousands, maybe 40,000 MS-13 members, as well as other men who have been accused of being in gangs without anything approaching the judicial process that normally takes place. They've been jailed through mass trials, and it's led to a reduction in crime. I can talk about some other reasons, but it's made Bukele popular. Now it looks pretty obvious that what's taking place down there is entering a new stage. The new stage is that, and it raises questions about why CCOT was established in the first place. The Trump administration is seeking a gang declaration in Haiti, and with Bukele's cooperation, making plans to expand CCOT to 80,000 beds and move Haitian gang members there. And they're moving Venezuelans into CCOT who came to the U.S. legally through the TPS policy. They're not illegal immigrants or undocumented per se. They were basically lured here after we destroyed their economy. 90% of those who have been deported to CCOT have no criminal record whatsoever. Only 6 have even been accused of felonies. All have been accused by Trump of being members of Tren de Aragua, and intelligence officials are leaking to the press, which is causing another intrigue inside the Trump administration, that they don't believe Tren de Aragua is really active in the United States or that it is connected in any way to the Venezuelan government. Tulsi Gabbard has come out and declared, oh no, that's not true, and they're the ones manipulating intelligence. And here she is basically making the case for regime change in Venezuela in order to support the deportation policy of Trump, which is sending as many to Bukele as possible. What is Bukele getting? Well, he's the president of a poor country, one of the poorest in the Western Hemisphere, which has basically survived off remittances since the Civil War, sponsored by the U.S., helped destroy their society. Can go into detail about that another time. He's getting $20,000 per head. So this is a source of cash. He's become one of the world's largest for-profit jailers. And it's led to this beautiful friendship with Donald Trump, where Trump influencers are actually going down to El Salvador. This is Nick Shirley, someone who's in the White House briefing room. He's one of the Trump influencers who gets like access to the Oval Office to produce like slavery porn. This isn't even CCOT, by the way.
This is a prison here inside of El Salvador, and each and every single person you see right now in this video are prisoners, and they made this factory so that way they can now use this factory to create new clothes, one for the prisoners, for the schools, for the government themselves, the hospitals, anything they need, they can now use it and make it here inside of El Salvador versus having to go get it from a country like the United States or China, helping create a more self-sufficient El Salvador. And each and every single day that a prisoner is working here inside of this factory, they then get 2 days taken away from their sentence. So imagine you have 10 years on your sentence, and by working in here, you can get your sentence reduced all the way down to 5 years. Technically, if you work for 5 years inside of this prison, you are then going to get your time cut in half every single day you work inside of one of the systems they have here set in El Salvador. It is actually pretty amazing. And what price would you personally pay on 2 extra days of your life?
Pretty amazing. A slave camp is pretty amazing. Also, the math doesn't add up, but what he said is that it's made El Salvador into one of the safest and most prosperous countries in the world. El Salvador is not one of the most prosperous countries in the world, and producing cheap textiles, I highly doubt they're all for domestic production and they're not for export. That wouldn't add up either. This is not CCOT. These aren't guys who have gang tattoos, who are hardcore MS-13 operatives. Many of these are minor offenders who got long sentences, and they've just been turned into free labor for Bukele, and the MAGA world thinks this is awesome. This is their model for the United States. I mean, Eric Prince has come out and said it. And Aaron, feel free to jump in, but now a major row, I guess as the British would call it, has erupted between Bukele and Venezuela that I think illustrates the geopolitical direction of Trump's deportation policy and the real role of Bukele in Trump's regional policy. And it's a letter from Nayib Bukele to Nicolas Maduro. We'll just hit the translate function so everyone who speaks English can, presumably you speak English, can read it as well.
And you want to zoom in if you can, so the text is a little bigger.
I cannot. Oh, well, here we go.
Yeah.
All right. So unlike our detainees, many of whom he's referring to, all the Venezuelans we have in custody were detained as part of an operation against gangs like the Tren de Aragua in the United States. False. You have there's like one known LGBT activist who has been detained. There have been numerous figures who've been detained who are confirmed to not be part of the gang, along with the fact that the vast majority of them were not even accused of any crime. Unlike our detainees, and this is just referring to the Venezuelans, many of whom have committed murder. Your political prisoners have committed no crime. The only reason they are imprisoned is because they opposed you and your electoral fraud. So I want to propose a humanitarian agreement that includes the repatriation of 100% of the 252 Venezuelans in exchange for the release and delivery of an identical number of the thousands of political prisoners that you hold. And then those who are mentioned are family members and figures associated with Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez, who are the U.S. State Department, U.S. intelligence-run opposition figures who have inflamed the entire crisis in Venezuela by pushing sanctions, color revolutions, and regime change and coups, participated in coups, and who actually oppose Maduro's attempt to repatriate the Venezuelan migrants who are being held in this torture camp in a country they've never been. So what he's doing right here, Bukele is doing, is admitting that the Venezuelans are basically hostages and that they are being held as collateral. But collateral for who? Collateral for who? Collateral for his masters in Washington. Because that letter that he read right there, it looks like it was crafted by Marco Rubio's State Department. Those are Rubio demands. He's demanding an exchange of Venezuelans for figures that have been run by the U.S., who are U.S. assets. And remember, when Bukele met with Donald Trump in the White House, he was asked, why can't you bring back, Kilmar Abrego? The Supreme Court has ordered it. Why don't you let him out? And he said, I have no power. I can't let him out. How do you want me to let him out? And he's basically saying, Donald Trump tells me who to let out and who to let in, and I'm just getting a bunch of money. So that says it all right there. And now there is a new geopolitical dimension, which is focused entirely on pushing regime change in Venezuela. And behind this all is Marco Rubio, who's, become close friends with Bukele. This is not just about, cleaning up our streets here in the U.S. And the mass deportations aren't even happening. It's just, smashy by ICE agents, smash and grab by ICE agents here and there. Wake up, because the policy is actually going to encourage more mass migration from Venezuela by destroying their economy, keeping them in a state of perpetual sanctions. And maybe they want that.
Well, yeah, that's been their policy in the first term. When they launched the coup, they knew that trying to destroy Venezuela's economy would cause migration. Trump was explicitly told that. He went ahead with it anyway, and they're continuing that policy. I know there are some people in the Trump camp who want to give up on the Venezuela regime change campaign, mainly because they want access to Venezuela's energy. But it looks like Marco Rubio, his policy is winning out so far, because Trump, if he wanted to, could talk to Maduro. He's floated it before, but he doesn't seem very interested in that. And he seems interested instead on creating more migrants and also keeping the cost of energy high, because if the U.S. access Venezuela's energy, the cost will go down. But the U.S. wants to cut itself off from that just so it could have the opportunity to continue regime change.
Definitely. And someone said, CCOT houses some very dangerous people. What do you do with them? Well, that's not the issue anymore. I don't think anyone is going to meddle in Salvadoran politics the way that Bukele has meddled in American politics, openly flouting court orders by the U.S. There was a court order by a federal court to bring the Venezuelans back to the U.S. for processing. They could have been deported to Venezuela. It's about the use of CCOT as a foreign black site by the Trump administration, taking the policy that emerged under George W. Bush, having black sites in Poland or black sites in Guantanamo Bay. It is a civil liberties issue, and it's a geopolitical issue. It's an issue of empire, using CCOT as an imperial weapon, using it now as an avenue for U.S. intervention in Haiti. That's the issue here. And Bukele has achieved his value to one political mafia in Washington by humiliating the other political mafia and the Democrats, and by serving as a loyal for-profit jailer and comprador regime that Trump can trust. That's what he's seeking. And it really highlights Trump's role at this point. This is where late capitalism is going. Just the mass jailing of the poor, repression, stripping us of our free speech rights, and enabling, as we see with other Trump allies like Javier Milei in Argentina, the multinational corporations behind these colorful, seemingly hilarious or magnetic cartoon figures who sit in the president's chair, enabling them to strip what's left of these dwindling resources. That's what this is about. That's ultimately what the war in Iran will be about. So it's important to wake up to what's really happening here and look past the culture war, the superficial culture war debate on immigration.